Hello and welcome to our Nozomi Networks webinar. I am Carmen Villegas, Director of Vendor Business Development for Nozomi. Today I will be joined by our special guest, Patrick Bedwell, Senior Director of Product and Partner Marketing at Nozomi Networks. Today's topic is how to close cybersecurity gap in converged OT and IoT environments. All of our regular attendees have seen this slide before, but for our new attendees, this slide represents just a few of our key differentiators. Exclusive Networks' key contribution to the industry is that we specialize in cybersecurity and in the cloud, maintaining specialization within a narrow set of best-of-breed vendors such as Nozomi Networks. In this way, Exclusive Networks can assist the channel community with vendor-specific training, sales, design, implementation, pre-staging, and of course, supply chain logistics for both domestically and globally, filling in the gaps by helping many different types of partners to supply and deliver relevant multi-vendor solutions to the customers. Before I hand it over to Patrick, I'd like to remind you to please use the chat window for any questions, or you can ask them at the end of the presentation during Q&A. Patrick, the floor is all yours.
Thanks, Carmen, and thanks everybody for joining us today. My name is Patrick Bedwell. I run the Product and Partner Marketing team at Nozomi Networks. What I want to talk to you today is about the cybersecurity gap that organizations can create when they converge their OT and IoT environments, and how you can help them close those gaps. I'll first give you an introduction to Nozomi Networks. Then I'll talk a little about the market forces that our customers tell us about when they're dealing with OT and IoT environments. Talk about some of the recent threats that are targeting those environments. And then give you an overview of the capabilities of Nozomi Networks and how it can help you improve the visibility and security for your customers' converged IoT and OT environments. And then lastly, give you a couple of case studies about how customers are actually deploying that technology to improve their security and visibility. To tell you a little bit more about Nozomi Networks, we were created in 2013 by two experts in artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. The team worked early with Enel, the global energy producer, to create an enterprise-ready product. Once they created that, they moved to the US. We now have 11 offices around the world, in addition to our European headquarters in Madrid, Switzerland, and our global headquarters in San Francisco. And before I go any further, I should probably give you a little explanation. In terms of the terminology you'll hear me use, OT refers to operational technology. It includes terms you may have heard such as ICS, or Industrial Control Systems, DCS, Distributed Control Systems, and SCADA, which stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. OT spans diverse industries, everything from critical infrastructure, such as water, energy, oil and gas, to transportation, building automation, manufacturing. The term IoT doesn't refer to all Internet of Things devices, but it's more specific. It's talking about those devices that are deployed in industrial uses. The term you might hear as well is Industrial IoT or IIoT. In terms of our customer base, we have customers in every industry where OT and IoT is fundamental to their business's success. There are 4 industries I want to highlight where we achieved early leadership status. The customers in those industries I can name are in oil and gas, it's Enel, which is now the top 3 in utilities in the world. We protect over 650 hydrogeneration sites worldwide. In pharmaceuticals, GlaxoSmithKline. In mining, we protect Rio Tinto, which is one of the top 3 mining companies. Utilities, we've got a wide range of power companies to protect, including National Power, which is one of the largest utilities in New Zealand. Beyond those industries, we also protect water, manufacturing, chemical production, pretty much all the industries you see on the right side of the page. Everywhere IoT plays an important role, manufacturing, smart cities, and so forth. OT environments are experiencing a great deal of change due to the market forces that are driving their business initiatives. And the 4 things that we hear consistently from our customers that they're dealing with are what you see here. First is digital transformation. As organizations rapidly adopt new technologies and new use cases to gain a competitive advantage, they can create gaps in their security posture. The Internet of Everything is something companies have been dealing with for a while, and it's definitely affecting OT environments. Juniper Research recently published a forecast saying that by 2024, there was going to be 83 billion IoT connections, and that 70% of those would be in the industrial sector. Risk management is not something that's new to OT, but the issue of protecting their networks against IT-based threats is. So in addition to having to be concerned about disruptions to supply chain or operational issues that affect their ability to get products to market, they also now have to worry about their devices being involved in data theft and network breaches. And lastly is IT and OT convergence. There, for purposes of efficiency, organizations are under a great deal of pressure to eliminate siloed technologies, to eliminate standalone teams, and to consolidate platforms, consolidating processes and technologies. In terms of the difference between consumer IoT and industrial IoT, they're both connecting physical and digital environments. It's just a question of what the environments are that they're connecting and what are they measuring. On the consumer side, often they're deployed in the home for, say, energy system management, maybe maintaining appliances, or perhaps if you've purchased wearable technology or wearable sensors, they may be monitoring your heart rate in a workout. On the industrial side, they're deployed for a range of purposes, but the data is used to optimize the performance of more traditional industrial technology like water pumps, manufacturing, so forth. There's some common characteristics though. They are single purpose. They have limited compute power in terms of their processors themselves are very small. That means also they have limited security, whether it is non-updatable firmware or the processing power is so small there's no room to be able to install an agent or to manage it. I'd like to double click on the topic of converged IoT and OT environments I mentioned a moment ago. It's really been only in the last few years have IoT devices begun to be deployed in OT. In the past, OT environments were isolated. They didn't have enterprise connectivity. They didn't have internet connectivity, so they were considered low risk. The security, if it was in place, was really meant to limit physical access to the networks, not internet or IT access. They were isolated. The security teams that were operating any security controls were isolated as well. They had legacy equipment running. The equipment life cycle is extremely long in OT. Systems deployed 10 years or longer are still there. The operating system, the protocols have been around forever, it seems like. Modbus is one of the de facto standard protocols. It was created in 1979, and it's still active in most networks. Things are changing, however. Because of the converged IoT and OT initiative, as I mentioned before, you've got this common technology platforms. You've got the single team managing both the OT and the IoT assets, as well as access is more closely integrated. And so it's presenting challenges for protecting traditionally unprotected systems. And if you aren't talking to your customers about OT and IoT converging, perhaps you should. This slide from Gartner hopefully gets your attention. What it shows is that they did a survey last year of approximately 400 professionals, IT professionals, asking them one question around adoption of IoT. 93% of them were going to augment or replace some or all of their OT monitoring control systems in the next 12 months. That's a staggering consistency of response. So it shows you that the IoT device deployment is a key priority for most of your customers. So if you're not talking to them today, you should. And when you do talk to them, keep in mind that there's going to be two major issues that your customers are likely to face when dealing with converged IoT and OT environments. First, visibility. It's a challenge in almost every network, and converged IoT and OT networks are no different. Customers often come to us because of a fundamental issue or fundamental lack of visibility they have. They don't know where their OT devices are. They don't know what IoT devices are on the network, what vulnerabilities are on those devices, what protocols are running, or what other systems or assets are communicating with. A fundamental issue is with traditional IT asset discovery and network management tools they may have deployed on the IT side, those tools lack the protocol support needed to identify and monitor OT assets because of reasons I mentioned a moment ago. And conversely, on the IT side, or the IoT side, Traditional OT monitoring tools are not designed to understand the protocols or the dynamic nature of IoT devices. Why visibility is so important is that many industrial environments operate under one or more regulatory frameworks, and network visibility is a critical part of complying with those frameworks. So it's not only just the pure operational side, but there's also the compliance side to be concerned with as well. On the security side, the challenge is that opening up of the previously isolated OT networks to the broader IT systems and threats means that in spite of the efficiencies you're getting, you're also significantly increasing your attack surface. And IT-focused security controls aren't designed to protect OT systems any better than IT-focused network management tools can. They lack the understanding of the protocols and behaviors to accurately detect threats and operational anomalies. Threats targeting OT and IoT are relatively new. There's a few that you may have been aware of, such as Stuxnet, which targeted Iranian centrifuges in 2010, and Crash Override, which targeted the Ukrainian power grid in 2016. There's been a lot of research done about recent threats, such as Fortinet published a report from Forrester stating that 58% of organizations surveyed had at least one OT security breach in the last 12 months, and that Palo Alto Networks recently published a report stating that IoT-focused cyber attacks are targeting legacy OT protocols. And our own Nozomi Labs, our threat research team, just published a report on OT and IoT security for the first half of 2020. Go to nozominetworks.com to get your copy. The report identifies different types of threats that are targeting OT and IoT in 2020. Two that stand out were ransomware and malware. On the ransomware side, what's different is it's written not just to encrypt any system, but specific services. Snake ransomware, for example, targets processes needed to support OT environments as well as IT. And it's going not just at any system, but it can target specific industrial control systems, remote management tools, virtual machines, and so forth. ECANS, which is snake backwards, that ransomware can target specific GE and Honeywell devices and services that are used in OT environments. Let me go into a little more detail about how an attack could succeed. This is using the MITRE attack framework for ICS, which, if you're familiar with the MITRE attack framework for enterprise systems, this is one that's written for ICS. And so the vocabulary I'm using from this, or in these different attack stages, is from the framework for ICS. First stage, of course, initial access, and something like a phishing email with an attachment. Execution stages, there's always at least one person, there's that one person clicking on the attachment, begins to install the malware. Once it's installed, the malware then will do a discovery of the network and gather intelligence. There's communication with the command and control system in terms of assets discovered, systems, processes that are running on those systems. And command and control is going to be happening throughout, because it may be once the initial execution, the malware that's installed has to download additional modules, or maybe once the discovery is happening, it's communicating to get updates to modify or focus the attack strategy. Once it's active, it spreads across the network. And then the last two stages, first is the inhibit response, which is where the adversary is trying to prevent you from responding to a failure or an unsafe state. For example, it may shut down an alarm or even shut down a device. And then the other stage is impair process control. What that is, for example, is replacing firmware or logic on a controller, where the attacker is trying to manipulate, disable, damage physical control processes, such as modifying the logic in a PLC. Now I'd like to shift the conversation and talk about how Nozomi Networks can help you protect your customers' networks. Guardian's a core product. It monitors converged OT and IoT environments, does it passively, non-disruptively. It begins by automatically discovering and tracking all the assets on the network. It immediately starts building a dynamic visualization of the network, does vulnerability assessment of those devices. It identifies any risks related to the network itself, detects operational and threat-based anomalies. Its single console visibility management provides a unified view of all the activity. That unified view accelerates OT and IoT risk remediation and troubleshooting, and it scales to any size organization, integrates with existing SOC workflows and IT security controls. You can deploy it as a physical appliance, virtual appliance, or even a container. And one thing I want to call out about Guardian, it has unique asset intelligence and anomaly detection. There are three aspects to this. It accelerates the initial detection of assets. It reduces the time needed to learn the network. Because of our extensive knowledge of devices and the fact that we work closely with manufacturers, we can detect assets with extremely high degree of accuracy. It also reduces the number of alerts generated during various scenarios, such as onboarding or expansion of asset. It also reduces the number of alerts from anomalous activity in terms of it's able to differentiate between benign anomalies and malicious anomalies. It's also designed for dynamic IoT devices as well as OT, so it can detect behavior that's consistent with IoT devices and not generate alerts, and maintain accurate device inventories of as your customers' networks change. If you'd like more information, we recently had a webinar on improving SOC efficiency that goes in a lot more detail around this technology. You can find that webinar on our website as well. To give you a better idea of some of the capabilities in Guardian, I want to show you some screenshots. Here, for example, is our network visualization. This is generated dynamically within a matter of minutes after you plug the Guardian appliance into the network. It starts building this map. It shows all the assets on the network, their communications patterns, protocols being used, and then if you click on any of those devices, you get a detailed drill down into everything we know about it, everything from firmware, vulnerabilities, so forth. We also provide an overview. This is a customizable dashboard that gives you insight into not just cyber threats, but also operational risks. Then this last screenshot is showing all the vulnerable OT and IoT environments. This is generated based on continuously updated threat intelligence that our Nozomi Networks Labs sends out. Customers with multiple Guardian deployments use the Central Management Console, or CMC, to provide that centralized visibility and security. It allows them to manage an unlimited number of Guardian deployments, whether they're physical appliances, virtual appliances, or containers. And it aggregates and consolidates all the information to a single place. It means that they can consolidate, or they can accelerate their IT and security workflows. Provides also summary reports and forensic analysis to provide the visibility across the entire global deployment. The architecture is very straightforward. Guardian appliances reside on premises, and they're physical or virtual appliances as well as containers. They report into the Central Management Console, which is also a physical appliance, virtual appliance, or a cloud appliance in AWS and Azure instances. The Guardian appliance gets regular updates through the asset intelligence and threat intelligence to ensure that the instrumentation of the Guardians is up to date. There are licensing options are very flexible as well. Customers can have a subscription license, enterprise license, or perpetual licenses. Now let me talk about a couple of examples where customers have deployed our technology. This is in the transportation industry. It is a top 5 global airport. The issues they had, or what they wanted to achieve, was they wanted better visibility into the core functions in their operations. They also wanted to incorporate any information generated from the security technology into an existing data lake. They also were very concerned about detecting threats. On the business side, they had a very complex environment. They had multiple integrations required with different third-party systems. As I mentioned, they had a data lake, SIMs, and so forth. They also had a diverse range of OT and IoT devices. They had centralized OT and IoT platform, and they had very high bandwidth, so they had a scaling. They were concerned about scalability and performance. They had deployed 3 terminals, and they were expanding. And then the environment that the technology was going to monitor included a diverse range of things, such as a building management system, security cameras, X-ray machines. They had an operating system inside the terminals called AirOS, and a baggage handling system as well. What they were really impressed with was a range of things. One, because Nozomi is a global company, we had a local presence. Secondly, is our expertise around AI and machine learning, the scalability, being able to keep up not just with the high bandwidth, but also the diverse range of equipment and devices in the environment. And then also our flexibility really, to be able to integrate our data with their data lake. The solution itself, it was 18 high-end Guardian appliances, multiple central management consoles to have redundancy. They were monitoring tens of thousands of devices, and that number continues to grow. There's also a strong professional services and training component, not just for us, but for our partners who led on the opportunity. And then on the pharma side, this is a global research, manufacturing, distribution, and sales organization. They had a vision for integrated OT and IoT. They also needed operational reliability. As you can imagine, speed to market is essential. At the same time, they need to protect their critical infrastructure. They're concerned about loss of intellectual property. So on the business side, they're concerned around improving their supply chain visibility. They also operate under multiple regulatory guidelines or regulatory frameworks. They needed to integrate isolated data into a SOC, so they were eliminating siloed networks and siloed teams and into one centrally managed SOC. And they also were doing a lot of acquisitions, so they need to be able to quickly drop technology into an acquired network, bring it up to speed to meet some other requirements like regulatory requirements. They had, in terms of deployment, 22 countries had to be served in terms of deploying the technology. They had a range of third-party technologies. They had SIMs, they had IAM, Identity Access Management, firewalls, other network security, and network management devices. And then they had ISA compliance, which is a requirement for industrial automation and control system security. What they liked about us was, or what they liked about the technology, was the visibility we delivered. That it's something that is common comment from our customers. They love the visibility that we provide them. They discover assets, protocols, communications they didn't know were going on. Also, the automated detection of operational anomalies. So we're worried not only just for the cyber threats in terms of the disruptions that can happen, but they also want to be able to rest assured that their operational technology, when dealing with just basic maintenance issues and life things on devices, that they're getting alerted to that before operational disruptions occur. And it gave them the ability to accelerate the response to these potential disruptions to their supply chain. We delivered over 150 Guardian appliances, 10 CMCs, as well as that professional services and training component to provide them the expertise they needed to manage their system. Something we are very proud of at Nozomi is our success with our customers. In addition to those two examples I just gave, you can go to gartner.com/reviews and look at their Pure Insights program. You don't need to be a Gartner subscriber to see this. We have 29 validated reviews on this website. They're from customers, they're from different industries, different levels in the organization, but they're consistent in how much they like working with Nozomi. One of the reasons why customers like working with us, for example, is that we have a very fast integration with their existing security stack or their network management processes. Here's some examples in terms of, on the left side, the SIMs and data analytics we're integrated with. OT devices in the middle, these are, as some of those that I mentioned before, in terms of proprietary protocols, proprietary operating systems, as well as security and IT tools on the right. So these are the more common security technologies deployed. We make it a priority to have a product that is easy to integrate. We know how challenging it can be sometimes. And so we are committed to making it as easy as possible for you to deploy our technology in your customers' networks. Another way for you to get visibility in terms of the value we add is you can have a proof of concept. It provides the immediate visibility into the security and network operations. These are just some screenshots that showed up of some of the visibility that we provide. As I said before, within minutes you start getting the network map built. So you can see systems of the remote that your network is communicating with, connections to public IP addresses, protocols used, new nodes of the network, new function codes that are in the network, device roles and communications, as well as more traditional visibility, asset management, so forth. POCs can be done very quickly. As I said before, we have the physical and virtual appliances. So by all means, if you are interested in understanding more, you can very quickly do a POC in your own network and see the value we can offer your customers. We have found that customers choose Nozomi Networks for 3 reasons. First, we are customer obsessed. We are committed to the success of our customers. no matter how complex or challenging the environment they're deploying technology in. Second, we strive to continuously innovate. We understand the market forces our customers are dealing with on a daily basis, and we build technology that can help them stay abreast of those market forces, no matter how dynamic. Third, they choose us because of our global partner ecosystem. They rely on us, they rely on our partners to integrate our proven technology into their existing environments. And with that, I'd like to turn it back to Carmen.
Thank you for a great presentation, Patrick. These are all the valuable Nozomi Networks resources available to you to obtain additional information on their general site, as well as their blog page and their partner resource page for training. You can also contact your dedicated exclusive networks account manager or via myself. My details are listed here. Also, please make sure to follow us on our social media to stay up to date with all of our latest news, offerings, and updates. And look for our exclusive networks monthly newsletter for a consolidated snapshot of our vendor news, tools, and upcoming events. And here are some of our best of breed vendors that I mentioned earlier in the webinar. Again, to learn more about Nozomi or any of our other vendors, please contact your dedicated exclusive account manager or myself. At this time, I'd like to thank you for your time and also open it up for questions. Josh, can you please walk us through the questions in the chat window?
Yes, thank you, Carmen, and thank you, Patrick. So we do have a few questions here. First question is, what industries have the highest number of IoT deployments?
That's a good question. The short answer is there's usually, well, first off, you can ask that question to your friend Google. You get a lot of different answers, but in general, there's about five or six that show up consistently. Manufacturing, transportation, utilities, healthcare, consumer electronics. Sometimes automotive is broken out separately as well. And the volume of the devices being connected to the network is really significant. For example, we have one customer who's got several million smart meters, their utility. And so just by enabling one technology, they've got millions of devices now connecting into their network and having to be monitored and secured as well. So anyway, so really it's amazing in terms of the volume. I gave that one Juniper Research statistic, the volume of connections related to IoT or IIoT, if you will.
Awesome. And does the Guardian sit in line in the traffic path? If not, does it use any agents to report back the stats to Guardian?
No, it does not sit. It's passive, so it's monitoring off a span port on a switch, for example, and it is not a. There is no agent related to Guardian. It's a physical, virtual, or container appliance that can sit anywhere in the network and provide the data or monitor the network. We also have what are called remote collectors, which are small. They can be ruggedized as well. Devices that can be in very remote locations where it doesn't, either you don't have the physical space or it simply doesn't make sense to have a Guardian device deployed there, such as a wind farm, that can report into Guardians.
Okay, and how does Guardian work alongside a UTM like Fortinet or Palo Alto?
It works very well. What we have is integrations with those devices where if you are, for example, monitoring your OT environment with a Guardian, you've got the Palo Alto Fortinet devices at the gateway. We can provide updates in terms of we can generate alerts that can be incorporated into those devices to update policies based on activity or behavior that we're noticing. For example, if we detect a malicious communication with a OT device or an IoT device from outside, we can generate an alert that then the Fortinet or the Palo Alto box can update the policies on the fly to block that communication.
And are you able to run demos that are specific to certain industries so resellers can see how the solution aligns with specific industries?
We can. Yeah, the short answer is yes. And we do that. Sometimes we do that because of their specific applications, specific protocols, for example, that are in those industries. But we can also provide very generalized demos as well that can demonstrate the value of the product across essentially any industry. It's really up to the reseller in terms of what they want to present to the customer.
Okay. And is Nozomi applicable for smart metering projects?
Yes, yes. Funny you should say that. Yeah, I just mentioned we got that one utility company's got millions of smart devices. Yes, that's definitely something that we're getting a lot of interest in. So we absolutely can help solve that problem.
Okay, and how long is the learning curve required for the specific? Not quite.
I'm not sure if that's referring to the learning process that the product has to go through or the learning curve for the operator. And let me answer both questions. In terms of the learning curve for the device, I can go into a little detail on that in a second. Well, we can start enforcing policies and generating alerts almost immediately in terms of there is a learning process. Any kind of OT security, IoT security technology has usually a learning process. And we've got something different. We have what's called asset intelligence. So let me go into more detail in a second. That means we can detect threats and anomalous behavior even during the learning process. But there is still a typical learning process to fully profile the network. The short answer is, on the other side, in terms of the operators, our UI, we work with operators to design a UI that enables them to get the information they need very quickly. So I know we've all worked with some products that were built by engineers for engineers. Fortunately, this is different. We continue to enhance our UI so that the people who are actually working with the product can get what they need. The UI's dashboards are customizable. There's a lot of flexibility in terms of the what they can see, creating the dashboards, creating the reports to give them what they need. So hopefully the learning curve on the operator side is short. So here, let me go back to the question around asset intelligence is really the feature that I mentioned before. And this asset intelligence capability is based on our extensive profile knowledge that since we've been developing profiles of devices we've been protecting since 2013, we have this vast knowledge, and we've essentially added the technology into our product in our asset intelligence service. And what it does is instead of say a traditional threat intelligence service or a threat intelligence feed that looks at indicator to compromise, communication with known bad websites, malicious content, and data, what we're looking at is the behavior of the assets and identifying legitimate operational or cybersecurity threats. The way it works is that the Guardian device detects anomalous activity, compares it against the known profile of that device, and then based upon what we know to be normal behavior, we generate an alert. But not like other technologies, what we do is we're actually able to understand the context of the behavior that we're seeing. For example, let me give you 3 different examples. One is that a PLC exhibits during the learning phase. So you just plugged in Guardian, it's just learning the network, and there's a PLC, a programmable logic controller, on the network, and it's only exhibiting one of 3 functions it's designed to do. But because we can recognize it, we know who the manufacturer is, we are able to detect what the firmware is, we understand that it's supposed to exhibit 3 different functions as part of its normal behavior. So then at some point we go from the learning phase to production phase, or protection phase, I mean. So now we know all the behavior, or we're protecting the network in protection phase, we're generating alerts, and the device now starts to exhibit all 3 functions. We won't generate an alert with asset intelligence because we know the device, that those 3 behaviors on the device as normal. Other technologies, because it didn't observe the behavior during the learning phase, even though it's normal, it will generate an alert and it will essentially generate a false positive because it sees something that it didn't detect during the learning phase. So that's one example. Another example is a device uses a protocol that's not associated with a specific function. We're going to generate an alert, even if it's during the learning phase, because we know what it's supposed to do, what protocols it's supposed to use, and it's abnormal. So even though it's during the learning phase, when theoretically there's nothing abnormal going on, we'll detect it, we'll alert on it. Competition won't. Because it's during the learning phase, they will think that's normal behavior. They won't alert, they won't generate any sort of indication of an IOC in process. And then lastly, it's just if there's a firmware update, normal operating behavior gets an update from the manufacturer, because we know what the firmware update is supposed to look like, we know who the manufacturer is, we work with these manufacturers so that we can build that into our asset intelligence. We won't generate an alert. Other technologies will see an update to the firmware and generate an alert. So that's a long answer to a short question.
Okay. What is the average time of implementation?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? What's the average implementation?
What is the average time of implementation?
Oh. We have some, it really depends. Depends on a couple things, the urgency of the project. Some are more urgent than others. Secondly, depends on the scope that we are able to, we can very quickly implement within, initial proof of concept to demonstrating value can happen in a very short period of time, a matter of weeks sometimes. And then the rollout really depends on the resources of the customer. It can be, we have some projects that get rolled out in terms of dozens or potentially hundreds of Guardian appliances can get rolled out very quickly if they have the resources and the essentially the time, the bandwidth to be able to get them installed. Oftentimes there's maintenance cycles where they want to build the deployment into an existing maintenance cycle, and so they're dependent upon existing schedules. But the technology itself, the product can deploy very quickly. And I mentioned earlier during the proof of concept, you can see for yourself how easy it is to deploy a VM on your own network, start seeing the technology. There's not that much tuning, as you'll find out once your system starts to, or your POC starts to learn your network. You'll see how easy and how quickly it can get up to speed. So it really depends more on, not on our technology, it's on the customer requirements.
Okay. And does the solution differ from protocol to others? For example, some systems use Modbus and other IEC 61850.
Sure, could you repeat the first part of the question?
Yeah, does the solution differ from protocols to others?
I'm
Not
not
quite
sure.
sure.
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm not sure of the question. If you go to our website, we have a list of all the protocols that we support. Just do a search on nozominetworks.com for protocols, and you'll see a page that's updated quarterly in terms of all the protocols we support.
Okay. What is the main identifier for the nodes? IP, MAC, etc.
All of that. IP address, MAC address. Yeah, I don't know if one is considered more primary than the other, frankly, but I know that you're able to sort on those. It's just one of just a bunch of different fields of data that we populate when we identify the nodes.
Okay, and then we're a little bit short on time, so this will be the last question. So if there's any other questions, please know that we will reach out to you and answer those for you. But the last question is there a specific process to control device firmware processes as it is critical?
Yeah, could you repeat that one?
Yeah, is there a specific process to control device firmware process?
That's one of the things that we detect is any kind of firmware updates. And so, yeah, so even though, for example, as I meant the example I gave before, where we didn't generate an alert on a firmware update, if, for example, that's something that's part of your individual policies that you do want an alert generated, even if it's normal manufacturer update, you can do that. You can customize the alert process to get alerts on any firmware update. If, for example, you are bound by regulatory issues to ensure that any firmware update gets an alert. So yes, you can customize the product that way.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you everyone for joining, and we hope that you have a great rest of your day. Have a good one.
Thanks, everyone.